What would you do if, after 5 years of standing by your husband, sharing instant noodles split in half, his success turns you into something he's ashamed of? This is the story of Alika, a woman who quietly held the key to her husband's downfall, right at the very moment he believed he was on top of the world. This story will prove that a true crown never sinks into the mud. But before we begin, say hello in the comments. Where are you watching from? And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support this channel, so we can keep bringing you stories that restore your sense of justice.
That night, heavy rain poured over Jakarta, as if the sky itself was mourning the fate of two young souls trapped inside a tiny rented room at the end of a narrow alley on the city's outskirts. Raindrops slammed against a rusted, hole-ridden tin roof, creating a relentless, metallic rhythm that forced Maya to place several plastic buckets across the damped concrete floor to catch the leaks. The smell of wet earth mixed with the stench of moldy walls filled the cramped 3-by-4-meter space. In one corner of the room, under the weak glow of a flickering 5-watt bulb, a man sat slumped over a rotting wooden table. His name was Rian. His shoulders shook, not from the cold, but from a despair that had reached its breaking point. In front of him lay a pile of rejected job applications and an overdue electricity bill. Maya walked toward him quietly, careful not to make a sound on the cold floor. She was wearing a faded batik house dress, the fabric thin from being washed too many times. In her hands was a plastic bowl of instant noodles, split into 2 portions, their only meal until morning. "Eat first," Maya whispered softly. Her rough hands, hardened from endless hand-washing laundry, gently rested on Rian's shoulder. Rian slowly lifted his face. His eyes were red, dark circles hung heavily beneath them, and his face looked far older than his actual age, only 25. "What's the point, May?" he said hoarsely. "What's the point of eating when we might get kicked out tomorrow? I failed. I'm a failed man." Maya smiled, a kind of smile strong enough to tear down mountains of doubt. She sat beside him, ignoring her own growling stomach. "Failure only happens when we stop," she said calmly. "As long as we're still breathing, we haven't lost. I have an idea. I've put together a business strategy for that property consulting company you always talk about." She pulled out an old laptop, its screen lined with cracks. It was the last valuable thing she still had from her college days. Her fingers moved swiftly over half-broken keys as she opened a detailed proposal, market analysis, financial projections, even digital marketing strategies that were far ahead of their time. Rian stared at the screen in disbelief. This is brilliant, May," he said. "But where do we get the capital? We need an office. We need legal permits. We need proper clothes to meet clients. We have nothing." Maya fell silent.
She took a deep breath and looked toward a small box on top of their fabric wardrobe. Inside was a land ownership letter, the last inheritance from her late father, a small plot of land in her hometown, something she had kept as her final memory of him. "I'll sell my father's land," Maya said quietly, but firmly. Rian jolted upright. "No, May, that's the only thing your father left you. I can't let you sacrifice that for my dream, one that might not even work." "This isn't just your dream," Maya replied, gripping his hand tightly. "It's ours. My father would be proud knowing his land helped build his daughter's future. I believe in you. I believe in the company we'll build together, Bintang Holding." That night, beneath the leaking tin roof, a vow was made. Rian knelt in front of Maya, his tears falling on her lap. "I swear, May," he said through sobs, "I swear to God, if one day I succeed, if Bintang Holding becomes big, I'll make you the most honored woman in the world. You're my crown. Without you, I'm nothing." Maya gently stroked his hair, unaware that those words would one day turn into a blade aimed straight at her own heart. The next morning, Maya sold the land. With the modest money she received, they rented a small shophouse that doubled as their living space. Maya worked double shifts. During the day, she was the secretary, the admin staff, and even the cleaner. At night, she became the brain behind every presentation Rian delivered.
She taught him how to speak to clients, how to negotiate, and how to project the presence of a leader. Rian became the face of the company, handsome, confident, and persuasive. But Maya was its engine, its heart, and its mind. The first 3 months were hell. They slept barely 3 hours a day. Maya often fainted from exhaustion, but she always hid it from Rian. Then, finally, their first project broke through, a commercial renovation contract big enough to clear their debts and give them real momentum. That night, their joy was indescribable. They ate at a modest restaurant, no longer splitting instant noodles. Rian held Maya's hand and said, "This is just the beginning, love. One day we'll own the tallest building in this city." Time moved fast. 1 year became 2. 2 became 5. Bintang Holding exploded with unbelievable speed. Maya's guerrilla-style strategies proved devastatingly effective against much larger competitors.
Rian's name began appearing in business magazines as one of the country's most promising young entrepreneurs. But as the numbers in their bank accounts grew, Rian began to change. Maya felt it in their 4th year. Rian came home late more often. He complained about the house dress she wore, about the smell of cooking spices in her hair, about how she was no longer in sync with his new social elite lifestyle. The breaking point came when Rian's mother, Mrs. Rena, moved into their new mansion-like home. Once full of praise, she now treated Maya like an inconvenience. "Rian is a CEO now, Maya," Mrs. Rena said one morning at the breakfast table, her gaze cold and dismissive. "Look at you. Clothes that don't even cost 100,000 rupiah. It's embarrassing if Rian's colleagues come over. Know your place. You belong in the back. Take care of the kitchen. Don't show yourself too much." Rian, seated at the head of the table, didn't defend her. He stayed glued to his expensive phone, eating the breakfast Maya cooked without so much as a thank you. "Mother's right," Rian added casually. "You don't need to be involved in the company anymore. I have a professional team now. Just focus on being a good wife at home. Dishes, laundry, that's enough. You don't need to be seen by the world." Maya looked at him, shattered. 5 years ago, this man cried on her lap and called her his crown. Now, she was dust, something to be swept under the carpet. Maya didn't know that behind this change was a far greater betrayal already in motion, a plan Rian had prepared for the grand opening of their new building next week, a plan involving another woman, and a truth about Maya's real identity, something she had kept hidden as her final card. In the luxury bathroom, Maya cried silently under the shower. She remembered Rian's vow beneath the rain. She remembered the taste of instant noodles they once shared. Then her eyes sharpened. She wiped away her tears and walked toward a hidden drawer in her wardrobe. Inside lay a satellite phone and an identity card bearing a different name, a name that would shake the entire business world if anyone knew who truly owned it.
"If you want me to be dust, Rian," Maya whispered to her reflection, "then you'll learn how this dust can blind you and bring your sandcastle crashing down." The first chapter closes with Maya stepping back into the kitchen, dressed once again in her simple house dress, playing the obedient servant in Rian and his mother's eyes, while quietly assembling the storm that would soon destroy everything they built. Morning sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of the mansion's dining room, reflecting off polished porcelain and neatly arranged silverware. Maya had been awake since 4 a.m., a routine she never abandoned, even now, surrounded by household staff ready to serve at any moment. Still, her mother-in-law, Mrs. Rena, insisted that Rian's breakfast must be prepared by Maya's own hands, not because she wanted a devoted daughter-in-law, but because she enjoyed exercising her authority, keeping Maya firmly in her place as a servant in her own home, a daily reminder of the hierarchy she had created. The aroma of expensive Blue Mountain coffee and savory truffle omelette filled the air. Maya stood quietly in the corner, wiping her slightly reddened hands on a worn apron that covered her faded house dress. She watched Rian descend the stairs with confident strides, wearing a custom-made suit worth tens of millions of rupiah, tailored perfectly to his body. 5 years ago, in their tiny rented room, Rian would hug her from behind, inhale the scent of her simple cooking, and whisper sincere thanks. Now he didn't even look at her, as if she were just another outdated piece of furniture. "The coffee's too sweet," Rian snapped after taking a single sip. His face twisted as if he'd just swallowed poison. He shoved the porcelain cup aside, spilling coffee onto the freshly ironed white linen tablecloth. "How many times do I have to tell you, May? My taste has changed along with my social status. Don't compare me to construction workers or low-level staff you meet at the market. I need precision, not habit." Maya lowered her head, her fists clenched tightly behind the apron, her nails digging into her palms. "I'm sorry, I'll make another one right away." "No need, you'll just waste my time and my expensive coffee," Mrs. Rena cut in, appearing suddenly in her flowing silk morning gown. She sat at the head of the table like a queen, peering at Maya over her reading glasses with a cold, judgmental stare. "There's no point teaching her, Rian. Low blood will never turn blue. Village character sticks, no matter how golden the palace you put her in. She has no instinct for refinement." She then turned to her son, her face instantly softening with pride. "So, darling, how are preparations for the grand opening of Bintang Holdings' new building next week?"
I've ordered a special gown from a famous Paris boutique, complete with diamond jewelry. I must look perfect as the mother of Jakarta's most successful and influential young businessmen. Rian smiled broadly, chest puffed out. "Everything's ready, Mum. All the important people will be there. Top investors, ministers, even representatives from Lentera Group. This isn't just a grand opening. It's a declaration of my power. That night will go down in Bintang Holdings history." "Lentera Group?" Maya asked softly, unable to stop herself. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with the sudden weight of a family name rising from deep memory. Rian glanced at her with thinly veiled contempt. "Why? You don't even know what Lentera Group is, do you? They're an economic giant. Companies live or die at the snap of their fingers. If they approve the additional investment I proposed, Bintang Holding will be unstoppable across Asia. But never mind. That's high-level strategy, Maya. It requires intellect, not kitchen measurements." Mrs. Rena let out a light laugh, sharp and abrasive. "Exactly. Just imagine Maya standing among diplomats and socialites. She'd probably ask where the chili paste is in the middle of a caviar and champagne banquet. It would completely ruin the prestige you've worked so hard to build." Maya took a deep breath, forcing down the storm raging in her chest. Lentera Group. That name was her late father's legacy. If they knew that the woman in a worn apron they mocked was the sole heir and the unseen owner, would they still laugh so arrogantly? Suddenly, Rian's phone buzzed on the marble table. A notification lit up the screen. Maya accidentally caught a glimpse of it. A contact named Selen, followed by a bright red heart emoji. The message was short, but sharp enough to crush what little hope remained. "Love, the red dress you ordered fits me perfectly. Sexy and elegant. I can't wait to be introduced as your queen on stage that night." Rian quickly grabbed his phone. For a split second, panic flickered across his face as he glanced at Maya, but it vanished just as fast, replaced by his usual cold mask. He stood up and straightened his suit in the lodge mirror. "I'm leaving now. I have important meetings with the board." "Mas," Maya called before he reached the massive teak door. Rian stopped, his back stiff, but he didn't turn around. "What now?" "I'm in a hurry." "Will I be attending the event?" Maya asked carefully. "I've prepared an old dress, my mother's. With a few adjustments, it's still very proper." Rian let out a dry laugh, full of mockery. "An old dress? May, be realistic. That event is the peak of business prestige. I need someone who complements my image, fashionable, articulate, socially equal. Your appearance would turn me into a joke among investors. You're better off staying home. Wash the dishes, prepare my clothes, keep the house spotless. That's your real role. Don't dream beyond your limits. Falling from great heights hurts." After Rian left in the roar of his sports car, Mrs. Rena approached Maya. She pinched Maya's arm with freshly manicured, sharp nails. "Did you hear that? Don't ever think you belong at my son's moment of glory. You're just a lucky maid he married out of pity back then. Know your place. At that party, there will be women far more refined, beautiful, and worthy of standing beside Rian." Maya stood alone in the dining room, now heavy and suffocating. She looked at the spilled coffee staining the expensive linen, the dirty plates left behind. Mechanically, expressionless, she began to clean. No tears fell this time. the pain had crystallized into something cold, solid, and dangerous. Later that afternoon, while washing piles of bedsheets in the hidden back area, her most loyal housekeeper, Bisumi, approached nervously, her face pale. "Miss Maya, forgive me," she whispered. "I accidentally passed by Mr. Rian's study earlier. The door was unlocked. He left these documents open on his desk, like he didn't care who saw them." She handed Maya a black leather folder. Maya opened it with hands growing cold. Inside was a draft of the inauguration speech, filled with lies about his self-made struggle. And worse, an amended prenuptial agreement, modified unilaterally and deceptively. Beside it lay divorce papers, already signed by Rian. According to the documents, Rian planned to divorce Maya one day after the grand opening, citing fabricated reasons, her failure to fulfill the social role of a CEO's wife and her inability to bear children. More cruelly, he intended to evict her with nothing, no shared assets, no support, claiming in court that all of Bintang Holdings' wealth was purely the result of his own genius and effort.
Maya's hands shook, not from fear of losing wealth, but from pure fury at the moral rot of the man she had supported with her entire life. He wasn't just betraying her love. He was preparing to strip her dignity and throw her away like useless trash. She went to her bedroom and locked the doors. Taking a deep breath to steady her racing heart, she retrieved a special satellite phone from a hidden drawer behind her wardrobe safe. She dialed an encrypted number known only to a handful of the world's economic elite. "Mr. Gunawan?" Maya's voice had changed completely. Gone was the hesitation, the softness, the submission. Her tone was sharp, commanding, absolute. "Mrs. Alika." "My God!" Finally came the reply, filled with reverence and relief. "We've been waiting for your instructions for 5 years. The entire board of Lentera Group has missed its true leader. The company has felt soulless without you. Listen carefully," she said. "Cancel all additional investments, funding injections, and any cooperation plans with Bintang Holding. Do it now, before the automated systems execute them." "But, ma'am," Mr. Gunawan hesitated, "you insisted on supporting your husband quietly so he could stand on his own. He stopped being my husband the moment he chose to become a snake that bites the hand that fed it," Alika hissed. "Deploy our best forensic audit team, trace every outgoing fund from Bintang Holding. He's been using company money to buy a luxury apartment and jewelry for his mistress. I want every receipt, every CCTV record, every transfer proof. Leave no gaps." "Yes, Mrs. Alika, orders will be executed immediately. And what about the grand opening next week? Should we cancel our attendance?" Alika Maya Hadinata stared at her reflection in the mirror. She untied her simple hair tie, letting her jet black hair fall freely over her shoulders. Her eyes gleamed with vengeance. "No, let the party proceed. Let him feel he's at the very peak. I want him to fly so high he touches the clouds, so when I break his wings, the fall will be absolute and irreversible. And Mr. Gunawan," she added coolly, "prepare a special VVIP invitation for me. Not Alika Maya, the invisible wife of Bintang Holding CEO, but Alika Maya Hadinata, the sole owner and supreme controller of Lentera Group." "I want to give him a surprise he will regret for the rest of his life." She ended the call and returned to the kitchen, slipping back into her faded house dress as if nothing had happened. In the living room, Mrs. Rina lounged comfortably, trying on various imitation diamond brooches Rian had bought, cheap fakes so he could save the real money for Celine. "Maya, stop daydreaming," Mrs. Rina shouted. "Come here and wash my feet with warm water. I'm exhausted after shopping for shoes all day." Alika smiled faintly, a mysterious smile, heavy with promise. "Of course, Mom. I'll bring the warm water." "Enjoy your final days as the lady of this house," she thought calmly, lifting the basin. "Soon the water you use to wash your feet will turn into tears of regret, tears that won't dry no matter how low you beg." The second chapter ends with Alika kneeling peacefully before her mother-in-law, washing the woman's feet without complaint, while inside her mind, every detail of the collapse of her husband's false empire is already being carefully designed.
2 days before the grand opening of Bintang Holdings' new building, the mansion felt heavier than ever, thick with suffocating tension and the sharp stench of pretense. The marble floors on the ground level were buried beneath stacks of luxury catering boxes, towering floral arrangements sent by business partners whose loyalty was Al-Salam fake, Al-Salam their smiles, and Mrs. Rina's endless fussing. Al-Salam, she summoned high-end boutique tailors to fix the tiniest details of her outrageously expensive gown. In the middle of all that noise and arrogance, Maya, Alika, moved quietly like an unwanted shadow. She wiped floors trampled by polished designer shoes, cleaning up the residue of other people's pride with a mop and rag, while her ears absorbed every insult thrown in her direction. "Maya, hurry up and prepare jasmine tea for my guests," Mrs. Rina shouted from the vast living room. "Don't move like a snail. Are you trying to embarrass me in front of my social club friends?" Inside the room, Mrs. Rina was busy showing off her new imitation diamond brooch, turning it under the crystal chandelier so it would sparkle convincingly enough for her audience. Alika didn't respond with words. She simply nodded, an obedient gesture hiding layers of meaning beneath her lowered gaze. After serving the tea with calm, precise movements, she asked for permission in a deliberately weak, pleading tone. "Mom, the kitchen supplies are completely out. I need to go to the wholesale market, it's quite far, to get fresh ingredients and proper spices for Mas Rian's dinner tonight." Mrs. Rina waved her hand lazily, not even bothering to look at her. "Just go. Take public transport. Don't you dare touch any of the shiny cars in the garage. Your house dress might dirty them. And don't take too long. This house is still a mess because of the party preparations." Alika stepped out through the massive iron gate, her batik house dress hidden under a worn jacket to mask her identity. But the moment she reached the end of the street, beyond the reach of security cameras and curious neighbours, a black luxury sedan with tinted windows pulled up beside her. The rear door opened smoothly. Mr. Ganawan stepped out and bowed deeply, the kind of respect reserved for royalty. "Please, Mrs. Alika, everything is ready. Exactly Al-Salam you instructed," he said quietly. Once the soundproof door closed, Alika removed the old jacket and plastic hair tie. Inside the car, everything had been prepared for her transformation. A laptop with encrypted satellite access, elegant yet functional clothing, and a bottle of premium mineral water. The car didn't head toward any grimy market. Instead, it drove straight to a tall, unmarked office building in the heart of the city's business district, the hidden nerve center of Lentera Group, which Alika had controlled with an iron grip from behind the shadows of her husband's kitchen. When she stepped out, her presence alone stole the air from the room. The aura of a servant vanished instantly, replaced by the cold authority of an economic ruler. Black-clad guards bowed in perfect unison as she crossed the private lobby. Inside the main conference room, 10 of the country's top legal experts and forensic auditors were already waiting, stacks of documents prepared, each one another nail in Rian's coffin. "Report everything, leave nothing out," Alika ordered, her voice hard as steel. A senior auditor stepped forward, activating a digital presentation filled with red graphs marking massive financial breaches. "Mrs. Alika, as you suspected, the betrayal runs far deeper. Rian Ramadan has systematically siphoned 40% of the company's operational funds into an offshore shell account. Most of that money financed Celine's lifestyle, a penthouse apartment, 3 luxury sports cars, and fixed deposits registered in her name. Worse still, Rian has used strategic company assets, legally bound under exclusive contracts with Lentera Group, as collateral for high-risk personal loans." Alika stared at the screen without blinking, absorbing every number that represented her husband's treachery. "So he didn't just betray me emotionally," she said calmly. "He robbed the company I entrusted him to run. How tragic. He's digging his own grave with my money." "There's more, ma'am," Mr. Gunawan added, handing her a physical file containing confidential transcripts. "This is a recording of Rian's conversation with his personal lawyer last night. He plans to make an extreme move. During the inauguration speech in front of national media, he intends to announce full ownership of the company, claiming it as the result of his pure genius, then hand you the divorce papers backstage so you can't contest anything." A chilling laugh escaped Alika's lips, sharp like breaking glass. He wants to take everything at the peak of his glory, she said softly. Ambitious for a thief. She turned to Mr. Gunawan. Is my final preparation ready in the private room? Mr. Gunawan nodded and led her through double steel doors into a secure chamber. Under dramatic spotlights stood a mannequin dressed in an extraordinary masterpiece, a deep sapphire blue evening gown made of premium silk, adorned with rare black diamonds that shimmered like stars in a dark sky. Beside it, inside a bulletproof glass case, rested a sapphire necklace the size of a dove's egg, a priceless heirloom of the Harinaha family, long kept in the world's most secure vaults. This isn't just an outfit for a party, Mr. Gunawan said in awe. It's an absolute declaration. Not a war, Alika replied calmly, her fingertips brushing the cool silk. War is for equals. This is a public execution. I want Rian to see the woman he called a maid standing tall on the ruins of his shattered ego. For the next 3 hours, Alika reviewed every technical detail of the sabotage plan. Executive elevator sensors, stage microphones, massive LED screens. Every system inside the new building was now fully under Lentera Group's control. Rian thought he was a king preparing his throne. In reality, he was a rat digging his own trap. By late afternoon, Alika returned to the mansion carrying a plastic bag filled with cheap vegetables she had bought on the roadside, the perfect camouflage. The moment she stepped inside, she was greeted by loud laughter, Rian's, and a woman's voice she knew all too well. In the living room, Rian lounged comfortably on a velvet sofa, his arm wrapped around Selen's waist. Selen wore revealing clothes and heavy makeup. Mrs. Rina sat across from them, laughing freely, as if Selen were already family. "Oh, look who's back, smelling like a wet market," Selen sneered when she saw Alika enter in her damp house dress. "Rian, darling, why do you still keep a maid who reeks of vegetables in a house this nice? It ruins both the view and my nose." Rian burst into laughter, then deliberately kissed Selen's forehead right in front of Alika. "Be patient, love," he said. "Just 2 more days. After the grand opening, I'll throw this trash back where it belongs, in some village."
For now, let her serve us one last time, alayhi salam, punishment for being born poor. He turned to Alika, his eyes filled with pure contempt. Maya, don't just stand there. Cook the best Wagyu steak I bought specially for Celine, medium rare, perfectly. If she complains even a little, I'll throw you out tonight with nothing but the clothes on your back. Alika met his gaze directly, cold, deep, unwavering. For a split second, a strange chill ran through Rian's spine, alayhi salam, if he were staring into the eyes of a lioness about to strike. But arrogance quickly smothered the instinct. "All right, Mas," Alika replied flatly. "I'll prepare something very special for your very special guest, a dish you'll never forget." That night, Alika cooked with terrifying calm, slicing meat with surgical precision. From afar, she could hear Celine posing in front of Alika's mirror, trying on jewelry Rian had bought with Alika's money. She heard their laughter. Alayhi salam, they planned a luxury trip to the Maldives right after the divorce papers were signed. Before sleeping in her small, stifling room, she had been banned from the master bedroom for over a month. Alika sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out a gold VVIP invitation from beneath her thin pillow. The name embossed on it was not Maya, but the identity that would shatter her husband's world. Alika Maya Hadinata, chairman of Lentera Group. "Tomorrow night, Rian," she whispered as she turned off the light, "you'll learn in the most painful way possible that real crowns can't be bought with stolen money, and that the dust you've been stepping on will become the soil that buries every one of your fake dreams." The 3rd chapter ends in suffocating silence inside the mansion, a calm that signals the coming storm, moments before destruction strikes straight at the heart of Rian's power.
The day Rian Ramadan had been waiting for finally arrived. That evening, the Jakarta sky burned orange, as if the horizon itself were setting a colossal stage for a drama about to erupt. Bintang Tower stood tall, a monument of glass and steel clawing at the sky, its cold facade reflecting the last traces of sunlight. Thousands of embedded LED lights flickered to life along the building structure, illuminating the company logo in blinding gold, a symbol of success built on betrayal. 100-meter-long red carpet stretched from the lobby to the parking plaza, welcoming luxury sedans and limousines carrying ministers, national elites, and top-tier conglomerates. Inside the mansion, now more like a suffocating prison to Alika, Rian stood straight before a massive mirror in the master bedroom, a space as large as a private apartment. He wore a custom-made black tuxedo crafted from the finest Italian wool, tailored so precisely it radiated absolute authority. His smile never faded as he carefully adjusted his bow tie. Beside him, Celine looked deliberately provocative in a blazing red gown covered in thousands of crystal sequins, showcasing every curve meant to feed the hunger of press cameras. "You look like the king of this city tonight, Rian," Celine whispered seductively as she sprayed expensive oud perfume onto his neck, filling the air with a heavy scent of luxury. "And you're the queen worthy of standing beside me on that throne," Rian replied smugly, his eyes gleaming with victory. He completely ignored the fact that downstairs, his lawful wife was still trapped in the role he had forced upon her. He glanced at his custom Rolex, worth billions, secretly bought using misappropriated company funds. "Let's go. We need to arrive on time to greet the major investors before the formalities begin." As they descended the grand spiral staircase, they passed Alika kneeling on the marble floor of the lobby. With mechanical movements, she wiped at imaginary stains, a flawless performance of humility. She wore the most worn, dull batik house dress she owned, her headscarf slightly untidy on purpose, creating a cruel contrast to the glamour radiating from Rian and Celine. "Maya," Rian called, his voice heavy with contemptuous command. Alika slowly lifted her face, arranging her expression into something empty, sad, and submissive. "Yes, Mas?"
Did you forget something? Tonight, after I leave, you are not to step outside this house, Rian said coldly. I've ordered the guards to lock the main gate from the outside and disable CCTV access for you. I don't want even the slightest chance of you showing up at the tower looking disgusting like this and claiming to be my wife in front of my connections. Mrs. Rina, already dressed in her overly extravagant gold brocade kabaya and imitation jewelry she believed to be real, chimed in while spitting toward the freshly cleaned floor. Hear that clearly, you village woman, and remember, when we return tomorrow carrying victory, this house must be spotless. If not, I'll drag you into the street myself and throw your cheap belongings into the trash. Rian, Celine, and Mrs. Rina left in peals of triumphant laughter echoing through the hall, leaving Alika in a silence that cut like a blade. The moment the roar of Rian's sports car faded into the distance, Alika slowly stood up. Her once hunched back straightened. She brushed dust from her knees with elegant calm. The sorrow vanished from her face, replaced by lethal serenity, the still surface of a lake before a storm. She walked steadily toward her cramped servant's room. From beneath the bed, she pulled out a biometric encrypted metallic suitcase. Inside lay advanced satellite communication equipment and a gown sealed in an airtight protective wrap. Her satellite phone vibrated. "Mrs. Alika, the elite glam and protocol team is waiting at the designated coordinates. The Lentera Group armored vehicle is standing by in the rear alley," Mr. Gunawan reported through the encrypted line. "Move now. It's time for execution," Alika replied calmly. She exited through the hidden back door, slipping into the dark, narrow alley she usually used to dispose of household trash, out of sight of her elite neighbors. A large black bulletproof fan waited, engine humming smoothly. Once inside, an international team of makeup artists and stylists moved in disciplined silence. This transformation had been planned with military precision for months. The faded batik dress was removed, replaced by cool sapphire blue silk. Her hair was washed, nourished, and styled into a modern, immaculate bun beneath a premium silk hijab matching her gown. Her makeup was restrained, sharp emphasis on her eyes to project authority, nude lips that carried quiet dominance.
An hour later, the van arrived at a discreet boutique hotel only a few hundred meters from Bintang Tower. Mr. Gunawan stepped inside, his eyes glistening. "You are the perfect reflection of the late Mr. Hadinata, ma'am, majestic and commanding. He would be proud to see you tonight." Alika met her reflection in the mirror, unshaken. Around her neck rested the legendary Hadinata sapphire necklace, a relic of immeasurable historical value. Black diamonds, sewn into her gown, shimmered like a rotating galaxy in the dark. "Tonight isn't about beauty," Alika said softly. "It's about reclaiming every shred of dignity and every asset stolen from me, publicly and without mercy." Meanwhile, inside the Bintang Tower ballroom, the inauguration was in full glittering swing. Elegant orchestral music filled the crystal-lit hall. Rian stood among prominent property tycoons, champagne glass in hand, his other arm possessively wrapped around Celine's waist, as if to declare he owned everything. "Congratulations, Mr. Rian. Bintang Tower is undeniable proof of your brilliance in leading Bintang Holding to the top," praised a major investor hoping for future projects. "Thank you," Rian replied smoothly. "Building this empire from nothing, without anyone's capital, wasn't easy. Vision and courage to take risks are the true keys to my success." Then the host's baritone voice boomed across the ballroom. "Distinguished guests, may I have your attention? A special guest from the highest board of Lentera Group has arrived at the main lobby." The room fell into instant silence. Lentera Group, the giant funding nearly every major infrastructure project in the country. Rian's heart pounded with both excitement and nerves. This was his moment. "Celine, Mom, we must greet them personally," Rian exclaimed. "This is our future." They stood proudly before the massive teak ballroom doors. 5 meters tall, the doors slowly opened. Spotlights converged, forming a dramatic corridor of light. Measured footsteps echoed across the marble floor, but not the heavy steps of an elderly man in a suit as they expected. Instead came the delicate chime of fine jewelry and the calm, unhurried steps of a woman. She emerged from the darkness, escorted by 12 broad-shouldered men in black, the elite security unit of Lentera Group. She wore a sapphire blue gown radiating unreachable elegance. Her hijab was flawless. At her neck, the sapphire necklace drew every gaze.
Her presence was so overwhelming that guests instinctively lowered their heads, compelled by an invisible force. Rian froze. His heart stalled. Air vanished from his lungs. The face was familiar, too familiar. A face he knew from behind kitchen smoke, yet the authority radiating from it was utterly alien. "Good evening, Mr. Rian Ramadan." The woman's voice rang clearly through the sound system now under Lentera Group's control. "It's a pleasure to see you enjoying the stage I temporarily loaned you." To Rian, the voice sounded like a funeral bell. Mrs. Rena gasped. The crystal glass slipped from her hand and shattered. "Maya, this must be a joke." Alika Maya Hadinata stopped 3 meters before Rian, her thin smile promising destruction. "Maya died long ago, buried beneath dirty dishes in your kitchen," she said calmly. "Tonight I stand here Alika Maya Hadinata, rightful heir and chairman of Lentera Group, and I'm not here to celebrate your fake success. I'm here to formally begin a full audit of every lie and embezzlement you built on my family's name." The ballroom erupted in panicked whispers. Rian trembled violently, cold sweat soaking his expensive tuxedo. Celine shrank behind him. Mrs. Rena turned corpse pale. Alika stepped forward, calmly taking control of the stage Rian thought was his. The 4th chapter ends with Alika standing at the center of the ballroom, the gravitational core of the night, while Rian and his family remain frozen, realizing their sandcastle has collapsed beneath the feet of the woman they once trampled.
The silence inside the Bintang Tower ballroom grew thick and suffocating, as if the oxygen had been drained from the vast stadium-sized space by the sheer presence of Alika Maya Hadinata, standing there in unshakable dignity. Rian Ramadan remained frozen on the stage he once claimed as his own. The crystal champagne glass trembled violently in his hand, its faint clinking echoing painfully in the oppressive stillness. His eyes were locked on the woman before him, filled with disbelief, bone-deep fear, and a desperate refusal to accept the reality crashing down on him.
Maya? No, this can't be real. This has to be a bad joke. You're supposed to be at home, in the kitchen, Rian whispered, his voice hoarse, fractured, barely audible, so different from the booming arrogance he carried just moments earlier. Alika did not answer with a whisper. She stepped forward, calm yet absolute. Each click of her heels against the Italian marble sounded like a countdown to Rian's execution. The elite Lentera Group security team immediately formed a tight, disciplined perimeter, pushing Selin, now visibly shaking, and Mrs. Rina, whose face had gone paper white, out of reach. "I've told you this many times in my heart, Rian," Alika said, her voice clear, sharp, and commanding, perfectly amplified through the sound system, now fully under Lentera Group's control. "The Maya you trampled like dust died long ago under your insults. Tonight, Bintang Tower will witness history, not the celebration of your fake kingdom, but a public audit of every cent you stole from my family's honor." The massive LED screen behind the stage, once looping Rian's heroic company profile under the slogan, "The Property Genius," suddenly flickered and went black. A second later, cascades of digital files, stamped confidential, poured down the screen. These were not manipulated growth reports, but meticulous, undeniable forensic audit records. "Distinguished guests," Alika said, as she turned gracefully to face the stunned crowd, ignoring Rian as cold sweat soaked through his expensive tuxedo. "This company, Bintang Holding, was built on sweat and tears, funded entirely by the sale of sacred Harinata family land. Yet the man you praise as a visionary leader has abused every inch of that trust to satisfy his lust and ego." The massive LED screen switched to high-resolution CCTV footage from a luxury jewelry boutique downtown.
Rian was clearly seen smiling, alayhi salam. He fastened a genuine diamond necklace around Selin's neck, its price equivalent to an entire division's annual operating budget. The image transitioned to bank statements showing massive recurring transfers from company operational accounts into Selin's personal account, funding penthouse installments and an extravagant lifestyle. "What is this nonsense? Stop it! This is sabotage! Slander!" Rian screamed, lunging wildly toward the control desk. He barely took 2 steps before 2 Lentera Group guards intercepted him with swift efficiency. "Maya, you've lost your mind. You're destroying the reputation I built in front of everyone." "Your reputation wasn't destroyed by me, Rian," Alika replied coldly. "It was destroyed by every rotten decision you made yourself." She stepped onto the stage with effortless grace, standing beneath piercing white spotlights that stripped away the last remnants of Rian's false grandeur. "You didn't just betray our marriage," she continued. "You committed tax fraud, falsified annual financial reports to deceive investors, and pledged strategic assets that were never legally yours. All digital and physical evidence has already been transmitted in real time to law enforcement, the prosecutor's office, and the full board of Lentera Group." Mrs. Rina, who had stood frozen until now, suddenly shrieked hysterically. "You snake of a woman! You must have stolen my son's money to stage this madness. Rian, call the police. Drag this ungrateful maid out of our building." Alika turned toward her with a gaze filled not with anger, but with cold, cutting pity. "Mrs. Sari," she said calmly, "the brooch you're so proud of is fake. Cheap glass. Rian gave you imitations so he could spend real money on Selin's diamonds. You humiliated the only person who ever truly cared about your fate, just to defend a son who doesn't even respect his own mother." Mrs. Rina froze. Her trembling hand reached for the brooch on her chest, her eyes hollow. Sensing the ship was sinking fast, Selin tried to slip away through a side service door. She didn't make it far. "Miss Selin," Alika's legal aide said firmly, blocking her path, "all assets, vehicles, and properties you received from Rian Ramadan are proceeds of money laundering. Police officers are waiting in the lobby for seizure and further investigation." Rian collapsed to his knees at the center of the stage, under hundreds of disgusted stares.
His custom tuxedo now felt like a tightening noose. Investors who once scrambled to shake his hand stepped back in unison, averting their eyes in shame and fury at having been deceived. Cameras that were meant to immortalize his night of glory now flashed relentlessly, capturing his broken face, his tears, his humiliation. "Why, May?" Rian sobbed, his voice choking. "Why would you do this to me? I'm your husband, half of your life." "You stopped being my husband the moment you brought another woman into the home I built with my tears," Alika replied, her voice steady and emotionless. "You stopped being my husband when you forbade me from coming here because my house dress embarrassed your image. And you stopped being human in my eyes when you signed those unilateral divorce papers, planning to throw me onto the streets with nothing." Alika took a thick navy blue folder from Mr. Gunawan and tossed it coldly at Rian's bowed head. "That isn't just paper," she said. "It's your new divorce decree, prepared by my legal team. It includes full restitution for company losses and the complete takeover of Bintong Holding by Lentera Group Salam, the rightful capital owner. You walked into this building Salam, a CEO. You will leave it with nothing, not even the smallest shred of dignity." Rian crawled forward, reaching for the hem of Alika's sapphire gown, begging in a pitiful voice that made several guests nauseous. Alika stepped back sharply, refusing to be touched by hands stained with betrayal. She gave Mr. Gunawan a subtle nod. "This event is officially over," Alika announced to the room with absolute authority. "Bintang Tower and all assets within it are hereby taken over by Lentera Group effective immediately. Guests may exit calmly through the main doors." One by one, the guests hurried out, whispering vicious insults about Rian Salam as he was dragged away by security to be handed over to police waiting in the main lobby. Mrs. Rina collapsed unconscious on the red carpet, unable to bear the shame. Selin wailed hysterically Salam. Her luxury handbag was confiscated for inventory. Alika stood alone on the now empty stage, gazing at the ballroom Salam as it slowly darkened. She drew a long breath, letting the cold air fill her lungs, feeling the crushing weight of 5 years finally lift from her shoulders.
The sapphire necklace at her neck glowed softly beneath the crystal chandeliers, salam, if offering silent tribute to her absolute rightful victory. "This crown was never meant for a head filled with lies and greed, Rian," Alika whispered, almost inaudible. Salam. She looked toward the closed ballroom doors, sealing the end of her husband's false reign forever.
The night that was meant to crown Rian Ramadan's glory had turned into a dark, endless corridor lined with the thorns of regret. After the chaos inside the Bintang Tower ballroom, Rian was escorted out through a rear service exit, an attempt to shield him from the swarm of scandal-hungry reporters. Skin dull, clothes damp with cold sweat, eyes ruined by humiliation and tears. Journalists hurled questions about corruption and infidelity like consecutive verdicts, each one landing harder than the last. Inside the main lobby, Mrs. Rina had just regained consciousness after fainting from the shock. She found herself sprawled on the cold marble floor she once walked across with pride. Now she was surrounded only by black uniformed security guards, staring at her with undisguised contempt. There were no social club friends rushing to help her up, no respectful greetings from hotel staff, only the suffocating silence of a grand building that now officially belonged entirely to Lentera Group. "Mrs. Sari," Mr. Gunawan said coldly as he stood over her, his voice stripped of all courtesy. "The luxury operational vehicle you used to arrive here has been legally confiscated. It was purchased with company funds. Our team has arranged an economy-class ride-hailing car to take you home. Consider this your final 1-hour grace period to vacate all facilities." Mrs. Rina struggled to her feet, fingers clutching the imitation brooch on her chest. It now felt like a burning weight of metal against her skin. She couldn't speak. Her tongue was paralyzed by humiliation. Outside, a cheap, rusted taxi waited amid rows of limousines and luxury cars, a brutal visual insult to a woman who had worshipped material luxury her entire life.
An hour later, the taxi stopped before the massive iron gates of their elite residence. What awaited her was even worse. The gates stood wide open, exposing the house's privacy, guarded by a disciplined line of Lentera Group officers. The garden lights, once warm and welcoming, now shone cold and piercing, like interrogation lamps. Just as Mrs. Rina stepped out of the taxi on trembling legs, a police patrol car arrived, its siren spinning softly. Rian emerged in handcuffs, flanked by 2 plainclothes investigators.
He had been granted temporary permission to collect essential personal documents before being formally detained for further investigation into embezzlement and money laundering. "Rian, my son, what have they done to you?" Mrs. Rina screamed hysterically, stumbling forward to embrace him. Rian couldn't answer. His swollen eyes drifted toward the terrace. Alika was already standing there. She was no longer wearing the sapphire gown from the party. Instead, she had changed into something far simpler, yet infinitely more commanding. A spotless white tunic and a black silk hijab framed her presence with uncompromising authority. Beside her, stacks of brown cardboard boxes were neatly arranged outside the gate, clearly marking the boundary between past and future. "Alika, please, stop this madness," Rian begged as the police guided him closer. "Don't do this in front of the neighbors. You can't throw my mother out in the middle of the night. Where's your compassion?" Alika looked at him calmly, as if observing an object that had lost all meaning. "This house," she said evenly. "Rian, has your ego grown so large that you've forgotten who paid the down payment 5 years ago, or whose name is printed on the land certificate at the notary's office? This property is a Lentera Group asset, temporarily assigned as a CEO facility. Since you've been dishonorably dismissed for criminal conduct, that privilege is revoked, effective immediately." "But my jewelry, my designer bags!" Mrs. Rina shrieked, trying to force her way inside. She was physically stopped by Alika's legal aide, who held up a thick audit ledger. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Sari," he said firmly. "Based on the forensic review of corporate credit card transactions, every luxury bag, shoe, and piece of jewelry in that wardrobe was purchased with illegally diverted Lentera Group funds. Legally, they are evidence. Touching them would constitute obstruction of justice." Mrs. Rina collapsed onto the rough asphalt, her heavy makeup streaked by tears. She watched helplessly as Alika's team carried items out, only worn personal clothes, old books from their rental room days, and a few family photos placed into cheap cardboard boxes. Rian stood broken as his expensive branded suitcases were carried back inside, the suitcases themselves having been bought with embezzled funds. His designer clothes were confiscated as well.
The police allowed him only one fabric backpack containing ordinary clothes he owned before he ever felt successful. This is too much, May," Rian whispered, his voice shaking with anger and shame. "You're really sending us to the streets with nothing but trash?" "I'm letting you take exactly what is legally yours," Alika replied flatly. "No more, no less. Just like when you forced me to live with nothing but a worn house dress and dirty dishes, while you partied with my money. Now you get to experience what starting from zero feels like, without stealing from anyone." Another police car arrived. Selin stepped out, her beauty ruined, makeup smeared by sweat and tears. She wore only a borrowed police jacket. The red designer gown she'd worn at the party had already been seized as evidence. "You fraud! You liar!" Selin screamed, lunging at Rian before officers restrained her. "You told me you owned Lentera Group. You promised I'd be queen of this house. Turns out you're just a parasite living off your wife's money." Rian lowered his head even further, unable to respond. Alika descended the terrace steps with composed grace and stopped at the gate, the final boundary of Rian's power. She placed a small, rusted key into Mrs. Rina's shaking hand. "Mrs. Sari," Alika said calmly, "I still have a fragment of humanity left, because you once gave me shelter at the beginning of our marriage, even while humiliating me. In box number 5, you'll find the key to a small rented room on the city's outskirts. I've prepaid 6 months' rent. Objectively speaking, it's still far better than the suffocating room you once gave me." Mrs. Rina stared at the key in silent devastation. "Please leave now," Alika said finally. "Mr. Gunawan, Change all digital access codes and physical locks immediately. Leave no trace of betrayal inside this house. The police escorted Rian back into the patrol car. Mrs. Rena was left alone on the roadside, clutching cardboard boxes beneath dim yellow streetlights. Curious neighbors began stepping onto their balconies, drawn by the humiliating spectacle. Behind the iron gates, Alika stood tall as they slowly closed with a cold, magnetic click. There was no triumph on her face, only calm relief. The ivory tower always looks beautiful from below, Rian, she thought as she gazed at the city skyline.
But when it's built on lies and stolen tears, it takes only a single breath of truth to bring it crashing down overnight. 6 months had passed since the night of humiliation at Bintang Tower, yet for Mrs. Rena, every second felt like a century of endless punishment. That morning, she woke not to the soft caress of high thread-count Egyptian cotton sheets or the aroma of expensive civet coffee, but to the deafening roar of motorcycle exhausts echoing through the narrow alley outside her rented shack. The rusted window refused to shut properly, letting heat and noise flood the 4x4-metre room. The air was suffocating. Heat radiated from the tin roof like a slow torture, draining the last traces of sanity and dignity she struggled to cling to. Mrs. Rena stared at her hands, now rough, cracked, and stained with dark marks that refused to fade. No more weekly manicures at elite salons, no more relaxing spa treatments, no more 5-carat diamond rings she once flaunted to blind others with envy. Her steps were heavy as she shuffled toward the tiny kitchenette, fused awkwardly with the bathroom. A pile of dirty plastic plates from last night's meal had already attracted ants and buzzing green flies. Kneeling on the damp concrete floor, she scrubbed hardened grease with cheap detergent that burned her skin. She remembered, painfully, how she used to scream at Maya over the smallest stain on fine porcelain. "Maya, how could you be so cruel to your own mother-in-law?" she sobbed. "Where is the devotion you once promised?" Her voice drowned beneath the sound of a neighbouring couple arguing, separated only by thin plywood walls that shook every time a door slammed. When Mrs. Rena stepped outside to buy cheap breakfast, dozens of eyes followed her through the muddy alley, judging, mocking. These were the very people she once called market trash and low class when she arrived in luxury cars. Now she was one of them, perhaps even lower, surviving on pity from those she once abused. "Look at that! Madame Bintang has finally descended to earth," sneered a vegetable vendor she had once yelled at for blocking her premium taxi. "So how's the rental, ma'am? Still smells like sewer water, or have you grown used to the scent of ordinary people?" Mrs. Rena could only bow her head, clutching her worn wallet containing a few crumpled bills, the remainder of the last anonymous humanitarian allowance sent through Alika's foundation via Mr. Gunawan. Every step through the alley felt like a slap across the remains of her shattered pride.
Meanwhile, behind the cold iron bars of a maximum security prison, Rian Ramadan sat silently in the corner of a damped cell. His custom tuxedo had long been replaced by a faded orange uniform marked with a number. His hair, once perfectly styled with expensive pomade, was now greasy, thinning, ruined by relentless stress. He had just finished another exhausting interrogation session. Investigators had uncovered that his tax fraud and money laundering operations were far more massive than anyone initially suspected. Rian stared up at an old television bolted near the ceiling. Static danced across the screen, and a familiar figure appeared, one who now felt impossibly distant. Alika Maya Hadinata stood gracefully behind a grand podium, wearing an ivory silk hijab that radiated calm authority. She was inaugurating the Alika Foundation, a national-scale women's empowerment organization providing legal protection, temporary housing, and business capital for wives abused economically and mentally by their husbands. "Too many women are taught that their world ends at the kitchen walls," Alika said on screen, her voice calm yet powerful, "that their voices are inconvenient, that their dreams don't matter. Tonight I stand as living proof that from the dust of humiliation and betrayal, a woman can reclaim her dignity and build a crown far brighter than the one stolen from her. Rian shut his eyes tightly. Every word sliced into him like a sharpened blade. The woman praised across the nation was the wife he once called a maid with disgust. The visionary now changing lives was the woman he had forbidden from attending his own celebration because she embarrassed him. The regret had become his daily torture, far heavier than cold prison floors or the cruelty of fellow inmates. "May, I'm sorry. I was blind," Rian whispered hoarsely. His apology was answered only by mocking laughter from other prisoners, tired of listening to the fallen ex-CEO's self-pity. Karma struck Selin just as mercilessly. Without unlimited access to corporate credit cards, Selin, accustomed to a socialite lifestyle, was quickly trapped by online loans and loan sharks. Her penthouse was seized. Her sports cards were repossessed publicly. Her name landed permanently on Jakarta's elite blacklist. She tried hunting for another wealthy patron, but a viral video of her spitting at Rian in front of police destroyed her reputation beyond repair.
She became known, alayhi salam, a parasite woman, avoided by businessmen who once chased her. Now, Celine lived in a cramped daily rental room in a crowded slum area. Every time she stepped outside, she hid behind masks and dark glasses, haunted by the fear of being recognized. The final blow came when Mrs. Rina, desperate and broken, stormed into Lentera Group's headquarters to beg for forgiveness and financial aid. She stood in the vast, luxurious lobby she once entered arrogantly, alayhi salam, a VVIP guest. Now she was merely an old woman in sun-bleached clothes, blocked firmly by a young security officer who didn't recognize her. "I'm Alika's mother-in-law! Don't you know who I am?" she screamed hysterically. Mr. Gunawan finally emerged from the elevator, his expression cold and empty of pity. "Mrs. Sari," he said flatly, "Mrs. Alika has conveyed her final message. Her humanitarian obligation toward you is considered fully fulfilled. The rental will remain paid until the 6-month term ends. After that, you may rely on yourself, or wait for assistance from your son, who will soon receive a 10-year prison sentence without parole." "Please, tell Maya I can't live there," Mrs. Rina wailed, collapsing onto the marble floor. "The sewer smell suffocates me. Rats are eating my clothes and leftovers." "When you ordered Mrs. Alika to scrub dishes until her hands bled," Mr. Gunawan replied coldly, "did you ever think about the sewer smell, exhaustion, or rats? The world turns by its own laws, Mrs. Sari, and you are now standing at the lowest point, burdened by the weight of your own arrogance and sins. Do not come here again." Security escorted Mrs. Rina out of the building. Outside, heavy rain suddenly poured over Jakarta. Mrs. Rina stood frozen beneath the cold downpour, just like years ago when Maya sold her father's last piece of land under the rain to build Rian's dream. But this time, no gentle Maya came to shield her, no warm tea followed, no kindness remained. High above, behind soundproof glass walls, Alika stood calmly, watching the rain wash over the city. From a distance, she saw Mrs. Rina's small figure stumbling away. There was no fire of vengeance in her eyes, only quiet peace. She touched the sapphire necklace at her neck, then slowly removed it, placing it back into its black velvet box. "The crown has found its rightful place," Alika whispered to her reflection. "And the dust has returned to where it belongs." The 7th chapter closes with Rian sobbing uncontrollably in his cell. Ali Salam, the judge's sentence, is announced over the radio, while Mrs. Rina walks kilometers through floodwater back to her dark rented room, realizing too late that her luxurious life has vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the smell of cheap detergent and regret that will last a lifetime.
The morning sun rose gently over Jakarta, brushing the horizon with clear shades of gold and violet, as if the universe itself had just washed away the fog of falsehood. Warm light streamed through the sky-high curved glass windows of the top floor of what was now officially named the Hadinata Center. The building was no longer a cold monument to Rian Ramadan's arrogance. It had transformed into a beacon of hope, a place where justice was pursued for thousands whose voices had once been silenced. Alika stood calmly on her private balcony, letting the morning breeze, still carrying the scent of last night's rain, touch her face. She no longer wore the faded house dress that had once been her uniform of humiliation, yet she felt no need to adorn herself with excessive jewels to prove her worth. Instead, she wore a sand-colored linen blazer, minimalist and elegant, reflecting the quiet composure of someone who had survived the fiercest storm of her life and emerged whole. Measured footsteps approached behind her. Pak Gunawan arrived carrying a pristine white leather folder stamped with the official seal of Lentera Group. The elderly man's face glowed with restrained pride, the years of exhaustion easing into something lighter, as if he faced his leader. Mrs. Alika, all divorce proceedings have been formally completed and legally ratified by the court, he reported softly. Every asset of Bintang Holding has been fully absorbed, cleansed of all illegal traces, and redirected into Lentera Group's social pillars. He handed her another document, his hand trembling slightly. This is the final ruling regarding Rian Ramadan. The court has sentenced him to 12 years in prison without parole, on charges of large-scale embezzlement, money laundering, and systematic document falsification. Alika accepted the paper, her fingers brushing its cool surface. She read it carefully, calmly, without a flicker of triumph or vengeance. What filled her was only quiet gratitude. Justice, finally complete. "And Mrs. Sari?" Alika asked gently. "How is she?" "She remains in the rented room, ma'am," Pak Gunawan replied with empathy. "She has begun washing clothes for nearby households to survive. She appears frail, very different from before. Her former arrogance has vanished, replaced by fear of tomorrow and the heavy weight of shame." Alika nodded slowly, gazing out over the city. "Let her learn directly from life," she said.
There is no disgrace in honest labor. The true disgrace lies in belittling those who do it. Her future is now in her own hands. My lesson is complete. That day marked a milestone for Lentera Group. Alika was scheduled to deliver the closing address at an international conference on ethical leadership and business integrity. As she stepped onto the grand stage, thousands of eyes from around the world watched her with genuine respect. Respect earned not through fear, but through principle. Midway through her speech, Alika paused. She removed her glasses and looked directly at the audience, her gaze open and unguarded. "Many have asked me privately how I endured 5 years being treated as nothing more than a servant in a house I helped build," she said calmly. "The answer is simple. I wanted to know whether love could survive without wealth or status. I wanted to see whether loyalty still existed when all one had to offer was sincerity and silent devotion." A faint smile touched her lips. The lesson was costly, but priceless. A true crown does not rest in diamonds or gold. It lives in dignity that remains unbroken under humiliation, and in power that stays humble when authority is absolute. To anyone who feels like dust beneath someone else's feet today, remember this. The dust you patiently endure will one day become the sacred ground on which your future stands. The room erupted in a standing ovation. Emotion rippled through the hall. In the front row, several domestic workers, invited personally by Alika, wiped away tears. They did not see a CEO before them. They saw themselves. That evening, Alika visited her father's resting place. She carried white jasmine flowers, their fragrance pure and gentle. Kneeling before Mr. Hadinata's grave, she touched the cool stone with reverence. "Father, the land I once sold with tears has returned, now transformed into shelter and dignity for thousands," she whispered. "Forgive me for walking such a dark path. Your daughter has returned whole. Our family's crown never fell into the mud. It was only waiting to be cleansed and restored with brighter light." She rose, wiping her tears, and gazed at the starlit Jakarta sky. Far away, behind prison walls, Rian Ramadan sat alone in silence, mourning every golden second he had wasted betraying the woman who once protected him. In a narrow alley, Mrs.
Sari scrubbed dishes with trembling hands, realizing too late that the house dress she once mocked had become her own uniform of survival. Alika walked toward her car with light steps. She did not look back. The pain was now only dust, carried away by the wind of justice. Ahead of her lay a radiant future, one she would lead not through fear, but through compassion and unwavering integrity. The world no longer knew her Alisa Maya, the invisible wife. It knew Alika Maya Hadinata, the woman who rose from the trail and carried an unseen crown of dignity and truth. The story ends with Alika driving toward the open horizon, head held high, wearing a crown invisible to the eye, yet felt by the world, a crown of honor that would never fade.